Welcome to KYNDversations, a space for sacred dialogue, honest reflection, and deep listening. I'm your host, KYNDversation. KYNDversations was born from my own inner dialogue, my journey of spirituality through life's unfoldings, questions, and becoming. Along the way, I discovered something essential, that transformation often happens not in isolation, but in conversation. In this podcast, I sit with people from diverse faith traditions, spiritual paths, and lived experiences to explore one central question. What does devotion mean to you? And how does your relationship to the sacred shape your life? My hope is that each conversation becomes a light post for those who feel challenged, disconnected, or searching for belonging. And that through our shared reflection, you might find courage, clarity, and deeper connection to yourself. Wherever you are on your journey, you are welcome here. Welcome to KYNDversations, where every conversation is a sacred practice. Together, we explore the stories, questions, and wisdom that awaken the soul and invite us into who we're becoming. Here, we believe that the deeper we know ourselves, the more fully we encounter the divine. Again, I am your host, Kendra, with a Y, not with an E. Let's have a KYNDversation. Today's guest is Reverend Dr. Courtney Bryant. She is a pastor, theological ethicist, and author whose work centers on the sacred possibilities of embodied life. Her scholarship and ministry examine how individuals and communities inhabit their bodies and being as sites of spiritual, ethical, and social transformation. Drawing from Christian theology, womanist ethics, and interspiritual formation, Bryant develops frameworks that help people move from negotiation to inhabiting, living with integrity, agency, and love in a world shaped by distortion and constraint. Her work pays particular attention to the lived experiences of Black women, whose bodies and agency have long been shaped by competing narratives of power, suspicion, and sacred worth. As a preacher and teacher, Bryant is known for her clarity, depth, and grounded presence. She creates spaces where rigorous theological reflection meets lived experience, equipping people to align their passion, relationships, and public lives with the movement of the Spirit. She serves as pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Mount Vernon, as CEO and CEO of One Spirit Learning Alliance. She is the author of Erotic Defiance, a work that reimagines the role of embodiment, desire, and spiritual power in the ethical lives of Black women and beyond. Help me welcome Reverend Dr. Courtney Bryant.
Thank you so much, Kendra. Thank you so much. It's a wonderful honor to be here. I love being in conversation with you and how much I learn when we talk. So
I'm so glad you said yes, and I'm super excited about our conversation today. So how are you arriving before we take a deep dive into this conversation?
I am arriving in this particular moment by the grace of God. Leadership has so many ways that it pulls you, and I'm just trying to remain focused on the task at hand. And with that, always coming with a kind of curiosity and self-reflection so that I can better understand people, but then also grow in the ways that I need to grow.
I love that you are in this season of just discerning how to balance everything. Leadership is always an interesting, stretching experience. At least that's how I've experienced. And you're bivocational, and I believe that every person begins their stories long before they have language for vocation. So when you look back over your life, Rev, what moments feel like God was quietly introducing you to the person that you have become and are becoming? Can you pinpoint those moments?
Wow. Yes, I think so. Primarily, I immediately brought it back to a time when I was maybe 6 years old. I grew up in the church. My parents were very prominent in the church, and so I'm sure that's part of my holy boldness. But I had been a part of this church with my parents since I was born, and they were having the problems that churches have, particularly because their pastor had left, and they were trying to figure out who will the next leader be? How do we continue on in the interim? And I remember sitting and being a part of the meeting because my parents just always kept me, around. There was not this big demarcation between what children do and adults do, sometimes to their detriment. So we were in that meeting, and the people who, I had known as part of my church family forever were speaking to each other in a manner that just did not make sense to me, because I'd sat with them in worship, and we were supposed to be Christian, and we were supposed to love each other, and we were supposed to be intentional with one another. But when it came to the politics of the church as an organization, I had a front row seat in that moment to the ways that we fall short, right? And as an adult, I can see that. Things were very testy. People were not seeing eye to eye, and they did not take that as an invitation to try to better understand one another. They got vicious. I mean, one person was like, yeah, not talking to me, but like, yeah, and your father's a drunk, like that kind of thing. And I was just like, right. And I just couldn't believe that these people were speaking in this manner, and I have no idea why I had the gumption. But I rose my little 6-year-old hand, and these people had the nerve to call on me, which is also hilarious. And this little 6-year-old was like, I don't understand what's going on, because we are supposed to love Jesus, and we are supposed to treat people as Jesus treated people. And I have not seen anything of that sort in this meeting today. Can you imagine?
Wow.
Can you imagine some 6-year-old standing up and saying that? And, over the years, I've, interrogated, like, what gave me the boldness? And I think that I have always been someone who tells difficult truths. And we can call it naivete, we can call it boldness, but I've never had a hard time with that in a large group, right? I think it differs when you are in, relationship with people individually, because there may even be more at stake there. But I just realized in that moment, and over the course of the years, as I reflected on that moment, that God gave me a boldness that a lot of young people didn't have. I also really just God was my reality. I had a God consciousness in the same ways that Alice Walker writes The Color Purple, right? These are letters to God. I often feel like Black women's self-interrogation is often a prayer, right? Trying to make sense of things according to the Spirit, according to source, as we understand it. And I'm really grateful for that. I think that also has contributed to my becoming. God has placed a lot of leadership skills in me that I think I have attempted to evade, actually. I don't want to be president. I want to be the vice president. I want to be behind the scenes, right? And I think that was for good reason, because, I think parts of me were maybe afraid of what's on, in the limelight leadership can be. And I think that was part of the wisdom that I had as a younger person, and even coming up, because leadership is hard.
Yes.
And this is something that somebody who works with me recently said, you have this incredible ability to take constructive feedback, right? And apply it, not be angry about it. For the good of whatever the goal is, right? So that way of sort of removing yourself and saying, okay, what is the ultimate goal, and how might I be used by source? How might I show up as source, in my mind, which is love, which is humility. It's a lot of things that we don't think leadership is. And so I think all of those things have helped to shape me, in addition to an excellent education. I was really, really blessed. My mom was very committed to me getting the education that she believed I deserved when she got a load of my mind, at 3 and 4 and 5. She was, let's plug her in so that she can use her powers for good. And then, this constant and abiding relationship with God. I mean, don't get me wrong. There have been dark nights of the soul, and there have been things that I couldn't understand. But even in that, I think that the lessons learned have truly helped me be the person that I am, and has given me a lens for ministry that is not something that we do on Sundays, but something that we are through our identities.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing those pinpoints of your vocational journey with me. And I know it's only a drop in the bucket in terms of the global experience of your vocational journey. I want to go back to the 6-year-old because the 6-year-old was doing some really good theological framing. And I'm wondering, as you have grown spiritually, theologically, if there are delineations that you make between Christianity and the teachings of Jesus. And what has that journey been for you, if you do make demarcations between Christianity and the way of Jesus?
Oof, I love this question because, you know, when Christian nationalism started to rise and we saw all of these people using the name of Jesus, take that trifling man, I don't even know his name, nor does it need to be uttered, right at that UFC fight on the White House lawn. How in the world can you glorify the name of Jesus Christ in one sentence and then turn to say something so disgusting about the former First Lady? That's not what Christianity looks like. Well, actually, that might be what Christianity looks like, because I think that I'm definitely one who does make a distinction, not necessarily between Christianity and following Christ or the teachings of Jesus, but more so Christendom, right? So Christendom is the ways that Christianity or the teachings of Christ have been applied or utilized or co-opted, right? For the sake of empire, for the sake of domination and control. So I would definitely make that distinction and do so in my book. It's also been really hard as a Black woman over the course of probably, let's see, Trump's first term was 2016, right? I believe. So, you know, and prior to him, we had that spate of Black killing, which brings up Black Lives Matter, right? And so I was in grad school during that time. I had come out of my divinity degree and I'd gone on to Vanderbilt to figure out what I was trying to do as an ethicist. I knew I was called to be an ethicist, but that time, I mean, and you know this because your time in grad school, particularly when you're dealing with religion, man, it's annihilating. I remember
That's a good word for it.
I remember being in the shower each morning and just being like, God, I know you're real. Please continue to be with me. And all that I am learning, just hold on to my hand, because the temptation and the inclination to want to say what they want you to say, right? To look at religion as this academic enterprise, you know, fine, okay, but I want to speak. I was constantly wanting to speak to the spiritual aspects of it all. And so Erotic Defiance is my dissertation remade. And I remember very specifically making the decision, right? I do this phenomenology of the spirit, which is like an experience of the spirit using the erotic, because the argument in that book is that the erotic functions either parallel or in conjunction with the Holy Spirit, because when you experience the erotic, you're experiencing kind of the same things that you would experience in those traditional African-American experiences of the spirit. But I wanted to center the spirit so that there was no way that they could divorce what was most important to me, which was God, source, whatever you want to call it, and really studying that as opposed to people's perceptions, you know, this and that. So that was incredibly important to me. I don't remember the question now.
No, you answered the question and you gave it a bit more. Around Christendom and the teachings of Jesus. And you are naming the book, Erotic Defiance, that you've written. And I am clear that talking about the erotic, particularly as it relates to connecting it to spirituality, is something that is generally in the walls of the ivory tower. So I'm wondering the definition that you're using for the erotic, what that means, if it's Audre Lorde's definition or does it broaden that? And I know that so many folks who aren't who aren't used to using the language of erotic
Mhm.
may minimize it to just sexuality.
Mhm.
So I'd love to invite you to share what the erotic means to you and how you're framing it in your book, Erotic Defiance.
Absolutely. And thank you for the invitation to do so. So, um, I was troubled by the constant perception and presentation of our bodies as a problem.
Mm,
And, you know, growing up, my body had been one of the principal ways that I encountered the spirit, whether it be my body functioning as a transmitter, as I sang, as I prayed. I knew that there was something about what I did with my body, the postures
mm,
that I engaged in, the activities that I engaged in that created a kind of opportunity for me to have spiritual encounter,
mm,
or what we might ordinarily call worship. Right? And so my question was always, how can the body be the site of such oppression, such problems, but also the site of worship? I was like,
mm,
something is not making sense here. And I started to look at the discourse on the erotic in my seminary program when I read Uses of the Erotic by
mm,
the Lord. It opened me up in such a way, and I loved it. I love the way she describes it. And essentially, she says that the erotic is the personification of love, but it goes deeper than that because it's not just something that you experience with others, but it is something that is experienced within you, right? Your deepest understanding of who you are and meeting the desire to be that person without restraint. And so I started to play with that definition, and I was very uncomfortable with the notion that she said that it lived on a spiritual plane, but it was not. I think she says it lives on a spiritual plane, but it is not religious.
mm,
I took issue with that as a religious person, and I understood where she was coming from, but I felt like to remove the spiritual or the religious element of the erotic was to do a disservice, particularly in Christian discourse where it was happening all the time. So I don't want to get too heady, but I was constantly studying the discourse on Augustine, right? Augustine is
mm,
gives us the majority of our understanding of our bodies, of sex, of eros in the Christian tradition, but he was also mired with all kinds of sexual angst, we'll call it, right? He was a priest, yet he had a child with a nun, right? I love in Augustine's Confessions, he's like, oh God, save me, make me chaste, but
mm.
not yet, but not yet. That cracks me up
I
every
want to
time.
enjoy myself a little bit more.
Right. Right. And so I was like, this guy is sort of bringing his own issues into the theology. And I mean, we can't be mad at that because we all do that, but it does become our responsibility to parse that out. And so I wanted to parse that out through Black thinkers, Black female thinkers who
Mhm.
have written extensively on the erotic, right? But we're doing it in unique ways, often through art, often through encounter with other bodies. But it was a troubling of the erotic that I love that Alice Walker does because she's always troubling the erotic such that it is spiritual, it is sexual, it is personal, and so I began to believe that if we had a more expansive concept of the erotic, that we would be able to untangle the mess that has been made of the erotic by
Mhm.
Christian theology. And I thought that this was incredibly important for Black women because so often the oppression that we experience is by virtue of the way we show up in the world in our bodies with this dark skin as females, that kind of thing. And so it was incredibly transformative to write this book. This is the
Mhm.
piece that I want to add, though. You asked me the question about how I make sense of like Christianity or the language of Christianity and the teachings of Jesus all throughout my personal theology and in my writing. I'm big on the words and teachings of Jesus,
Mhm.
particularly let love be your only debt,
Mhm.
right? That love
Mhm.
covers a multitude of sins, right? That I don't care how much you came to church, like did you feed me? Did you clothe me? Did you love me? Because, like otherwise we're just tinkling brass. And I take that to heart because I see so many people in spiritual spaces engaging in work that is sort of circa the spirit, but doesn't quite. Or I've met many teachers who can tell you fantastic things about their own theology, but then they treat you like crap.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
you talking my language, Courtney.
I mean, so many of us have stories of that. And at the end of the day, when my life is done, I mean, I do want to have strong relationships that I can look back at and feel good about. I want to have work that meant something and that people know about. But the greatest thing I want to be known as is somebody who loved people the way that God wants us to love people. And that requires justice. That requires equity. That requires listening. That requires boats and boats and boats of humility, Yeah. And so I think that's what comes out of the work and out of my own personal theology, because there was a period where I was like, we're gonna have to come up with a new word because Christian's not working for me, because there are too many people doing things in the name of Christianity or Jesus that makes the rest of us look bad when we say it.
I absolutely agree with you. You bring up so many good points per usual. I am interested in this polarity that's emerging as you speak when it comes to how the church universal can function as it relates to performance and practice. I think so often we perform church, or church can be performed, and the practices lag behind. And I think that creates some of the tension when we show up in our humanity in faulty ways and we're unkind to each other. We're not just to one another. So I'm wondering, as a human being first, how do you balance? Because performance is needed at sometimes. I'm not saying performance is not needed at all, right? No. Polarity is about them both belonging, but not leaning into either extremes. So how do you balance performance and practice in your own life as you wear multiple vocational hats as CEO and as pastor?
I have to start every day with source. Period. And I don't mean, and it's very easy as a church leader or a leader of a spiritual organization to talk about spirituality, to talk about the things of God and feel like, oh, okay, like, I'm doing what is needed. But no. When did you look for, and I'm talking about me personally, that face-to-face encounter? Where did you lay down and sit vulnerably? And offer up, like, these are the things I'm afraid of. These are the things that I need help with. These are the ways that I need to grow. I recently preached Romans 7, which is the chapter where Paul says, "Oh, wretched man that I am, who will deliver me from the body of this death?" And essentially what he's getting at is that, while he tries to be a good person, if you will, that he constantly is choosing the wrong thing. And ultimately where he comes out is, oh, God will deliver me. And in my older age, I'm about to be 50 in August, I am starting to realize how much God or source simply wants to be trusted enough to be leaned on, rather than us toiling, trying to make it good ourselves. And I think that in order for us to do that kind of trusting, you have to go before that entity to, number one, for me, recognize my creatureliness, right? So that I'm not believing my own hype. Because as a leader, you have people in you, oh, you're doing such a great job, da, 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 da. And I mean, and that's wonderful. And we all want to be affirmed. But I think in that time, that devotional practice in the mornings for me is where I get my wake up call, my reality, or my spiritual reality check, right? Okay, this is what the world's saying, but this is what source within me and beyond me is saying. And that's what I want to be tapped into, because that's when I feel like I am doing my best work.
I love that. I love that. Sitting vulnerably before source, before God. What does sitting look for you,
Mhm.
like for you in terms of practices? Some people have an altar that they sit in front of. Some people sit beside a tree. Some
Mhm.
people just grab a spot wherever they are and they
Mhm.
go into meditation or a moment of silence. How do devotional practices look for you?
I think because I'm a writer and because I am a verbal processor, I need to have that dialogue, right?
Hmm.
So I usually write my prayers, number one, so I can remain focused on what exactly I'm saying. But then after praying, praying is not complete until you listen. And that's the meditation piece that I think so many churches don't do.
It's
Don't
true.
do,
It's
right?
true.
Yeah, we'll hoot and holler, God, I need this and da da da. Okay, what God say? Did you listen? Or were you just like, this is my order, thanks? So, so it's listening. And as I've gotten older, that listening often happens out here on this balcony. I live on the Hudson River, so watching the water helps me to remember my small piece in a very large world. Um, I also music
Mm.
calibrates me. And so I have particular playlists that I will play for different seasons or emotions. And when I'm really starting to feel like, oh, you know what, you've been doing a lot of talking about spirituality, but you haven't had that connection. There are particular songs that are my go-tos. Um, yeah. I also, my mentor, the late great Katie Cannon, also
Ah,
taught me
yes.
to color my prayers. In fact, there's a book called Coloring Your Prayers, and that has
Mm.
been tremendously helpful for me because that helps me to realize what a visual I don't know how to describe this, but I'm a very visual spiritual person. So
Mhm.
I get an image, or if someone shares with me an illustration that unlocks something in my mind
Mm.
that makes it greater than just what my imagination, like the words I may have seen. I was recently watching this video of near death experiences. It's like my thing right now.
Okay.
And it is
Okay.
it is so my thing.
What platform is it on, Courtney?
YouTube. Oh, I'll send you
Please
some
do.
links. Oh my
Please
goodness.
do.
It bolstered my faith a few weeks ago in ways like I was watching a few, and then the next day I was just crying. And I
Mm.
was crying because so much of what the people said lined up with spiritual visitations or spiritual
Mm.
experiences that I've had, particularly the feeling of when that spiritual presence starts to dissipate and you're like, no, no, not yet, not yet. No, please don't go. All of the near death people were talking about, when they realized they were going to have to go back, they were so upset.
Wow.
They were profess. One was so profoundly upset that when he came back, he was depressed for 6 months. I loved it. Right. Like, yeah. So this concept of death that we're so afraid of, but it's like, we were
Mm.
probably afraid as fetuses to be born. Like, is there,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, so during this time, one of them said, yeah, as I was being escorted around heaven, if you will, every time someone was praying for me, a spire of light would come up out of the clouds. And so
Wow.
ever since then, when I've been praying for people, I'm like, I'm sending up a spire of light. And it just feels
Wow.
like it's getting through all the more. And then,
Yeah.
visualizing it. And I truly believe that Black women have the power of conjure. Maybe everybody does. I'm not sure. But I do know that as Black women, when we think of a person, the next thing we know, they're on our phone, right? Like one of the things I recently told my niece who just started a new job, or when she was interviewing for that job, I was like, visualize yourself walking in on the first day.
Hmm.
You know, I truly believe there is something about that. Like if it's in the will of God, I feel like that thing will help. It's like it helps us get to the other side, something about that
Yes.
visualization. So I
Hmm.
include that as well.
Oh, I love that. You gave so many good, juicy practices for people to tap into. So I'm hoping you all are picking up what Reverend Dr. Courtney is putting down. I like to continue I want to go back to your formation, Courtney. I know at least for me, there have been several people who have informed who I am and who I am becoming for a multitude of ways. You mentioned one of those people who formed you, Reverend Dr. Katie Cannon, and I'm wondering what other folks have informed your journey, and what significance did that shaping have for your life?
Yes. So yes, we know about Katie Cannon, who is the progenitor of womanist ethics. She was such a big deal, and I had the honor and blessing of walking with her during an externship that I was doing at Union Presbyterian Seminary in my final year of my PhD program. So I mean, literally, like every day, I was with Katie Cannon as I was finishing up my dissertation, and I also helped to launch the Womanist leadership.
Wow.
I can't remember what it.
Yeah.
Um, and so that was really amazing because she's this big deal, but she's so humble. She was so humble and full of wisdom. And I had recently come out of situations with a mentor who was not humble and was actually very abusive, low key, right? And who deformed me, if you will.
Mm,
And so to walk into that kind of mentorship and that kind of humility really left a mark on me about how true leaders carry themselves.
yeah.
The second, and probably all the more formative, was a minister at my church that I grew up at. Her name was Nicola Osunloye, and she was a minister of the gospel. She was never ordained. She just was licensed to preach. But I think that she was the person who taught me how to worship
Mm,
on Sundays, if you will, right? Um, she was such a preacher. I mean, straight no chaser. Um, and she had this enormous love for God. Don't get me wrong, she was fallible, she wasn't perfect, but she loved God and everybody knew it. I want that.
mm,
I want people to be like, she loves some God. She's a lover of God. The third would be Emily Towns, who was my advisor for my dissertation. Again, very humble, very gentle, very thorough and excellent. I think that she helped me realize that I could be an artist and a scholar at the same time,
mm.
those things to my work. And then finally, Bell Hooks, interestingly enough. From the time I was like 16, there was a period where I would just carry like a duffel bag of Jill Scott, of Bell Hooks's
Yeah.
work everywhere I go. And I think that is one of the reasons that I ended up being the kind of scholar that I am. She was a cultural critic, but there was a spirituality to her work that was undeniable, and the accessibility of her work also was something that was important to me. I think at the end of the day, no matter what the work is that we do, there are two things. One is Erica Badu. What good do your words do if they can't understand you, right? That's number one. But number two, like, what does it mean to bring these kinds of conversations to more than just those in the ivory tower, particularly when the ivory tower is disintegrating,
Mm.
right? So yeah, I would name those four. Oh, and then, oh goodness, my mama.
Talk about mama. Talk about her.
Oh, Dorothy Bryant. Okay. She is the best mother you could possibly have. She loves me with a love that is so deep and profound and never ending, and will bend in any way that is necessary to make sure that the connection is there. At the end of the day, what matters is that we remain connected. She is a lover of God. She is a follower of Jesus, and I use those words intentionally. She is the one who taught me about devotion, and not through any words that she said, but simply because of the life that she has lived. I remember waking up most mornings, she would be on that floor on her knees praying. That was, that was the rhythm of her life. And as such, it became the rhythm of my life. She is also she is so dead serious about being about it. She, like she's like, that's great. What are you being about it? Like that, I don't care what your position. Are you being about it? Using are you using the gifts that you have been given to amplify the right things? All like that's just her. And she loves everybody. She just loves them. She's always looking to give people the benefit of the doubt, right? And it's just, yeah, she's a unique one. There aren't too many who are made like her anymore. And so, just that consistency and integrity has been something that has been sewn into me just by watching her. Like, not how we have to be, but this is how we are. And that's been a tremendous blessing as well.
It's a gift to have a caregiver who is consistent in integrity.
Indeed.
And that statement leads me back to something that you said about 5 minutes ago as it relates to a mentor, a leader, deforming you. I have found that just in the work that I do, working with people who've experienced religious trauma, also having the experience of leading in a church, that abuse can be so rampant in spaces of spirituality. So I'm wondering, Courtney, how have you navigated systems of abuse as a Black woman? And I think of systems institutionally as well as the systems that we are individually, because we've been formed by external systems, but we are our own system. So how have you navigated those systems? Because they're so ubiquitous in our world.
You know what? I could probably say a number of things, but the biggest thing is I don't keep secrets.
And pause right there, because somebody needs to hear that.
Exactly. They do. Particularly women, because, I'm thinking about instances of deformation, but I'm also thinking about things that have been said to me or done to me. And I think that abusers capitalize on shame. And so they think, well, that she'll be so ashamed of that, or she'll be worried about how it comes off, so she's going to keep it to herself. In every situation I've ever had, particularly when it comes to dealing with men in ministry who have, right? As a single woman in ministry, and when I say single, I mean like not married. If they don't see a ring on your finger, and sometimes even if they do, there are all manner of crazy things, and I'll tell the very next day, like, let me tell you what happened. And I'll tell it to as many people as possible. You know what I mean? I had an instance where oh my gosh, this is when I was younger, maybe about, I was about 24. I went to a friend's house for Thanksgiving, and her uncle got in the bed with me. Like, because we'd stayed over, so it's Thanksgiving, we stayed over. And I stayed over at the house. He got in the bed with me. It was the craziest thing. I froze, right? Because you're just like, what? How did this happen? How have I placed myself in this situation? Okay, fast forward, immediately jump at, well, not immediately, but like maybe 2 minutes go by, but those 2 minutes feel like a forever kind of thing. I finally get up the nerve to because now he's spooning me. I take his hand and I throw it off of me. And I'm just like, and I immediately zip line to my friend whose house we were at. I'm like, listen, this just happened. We need to go immediately. Right. And you got to just keep telling the truth. It was the truth that saved me. It was the truth. It was the fact that people were hearing, oh my goodness, this happened. And they heard it from me first, because, he wasn't going to let it, So that when my friend told her aunt, and he had still not told her, it's like, well, why would you not come and tell me? Because he was banking on my shame.
And silence.
This is what I'm saying, because when you're ashamed, you are silent. No. And so that's how I do it. I'm not going to be silent.
And leaning on the power differential too.
That you must.
Yeah.
You must. Right. And you're right. It depends on the power differential. But so in that situation where I was being deformed, I wasn't silent. I told as many people as possible, and was like, I need help, because that person was whatever. We're not going to go into that too much. But yeah, you have to. You have to find people that you trust, and you have to tell.
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
to tell.
Yeah.
And we all know, like in the African American community, that code of silence, especially in the church, right, will have people thinking all manner of things about you. I'm gonna get in front of it from the gate. Like, look, this is what I'm experiencing. Who can help? Who is willing? And the sad part is sometimes people aren't willing to help, and they know
that too.
And they know about the behavior because it did not begin with you. The person that I'm talking about has a history and a reputation for deforming and abusing students. Everybody knew. But they'd rather tip around it. And I was like, fine, that's fine. You can tip around it all you want, but somebody gonna help me. Gonna help me. And you're not going to paint me into this box of shame as though I did something wrong. No, that's not what we're going to do. And telling my truth, telling the truth in given situations, and telling it often is what has saved me.
Oh, that's so rich. You can't see my hands, but they are clapping right now. Because I believe wholeheartedly in what you're saying. It's bringing up my own experiences in spiritual spaces where I have breached my silence and people have attempted to shame me or embarrass me.
Oh, yes.
And I recognize that in order to live a life where you're willing to say the things that need to be said, you have to be willing to lose community, to lose friendships and relationships, to lose opportunities. And I don't think people talk about that part of breaching silence. And you have to be willing to say, okay, God, I'm available for whatever opportunities are beyond this moment, because I know I'm going to burn some bridges if I disclose. I
did burn bridges. I did. And those bridges that I burned reverberated. So as I say, what is safe? Right? Then you got to say what is safe, because but I think for me, what is safe is being able to get up and look myself up, in the morning and say, this is the path that we've chosen. We're not going to be limited by shame or silence. We're not going to allow someone else's narrative of your life to be the only one that is offered.
Yes. I'm interested in how you as a womanist, as an ethicist, if you had a magic wand that you can wave and you could put in place parameters or protocols for the Church Universal, not just the Black church, for the Church Universal, on how they minimize abuses happening in religious spaces, what would you create? And you can take a moment to pause and just think about that, but I'm interested in hearing from you, Courtney, on what the vision would be.
My goodness. There are a couple of things that come to mind. The first is that we need to begin to imagine more expansive. We need to imagine God more expansively than we do. I think that when there is no room for femininity in our conception of God, that it makes women targets for any and everything, because the kind of respect that you would offer to masculinity, primarily because, masculinity is divine in, our frameworks for it. I think that if we had frameworks for understanding the divinity of femininity, we'd see less abuse. So I would say that's the first thing I would do. The second thing that I would do is I would want to figure out frameworks or protocols for misunderstanding and conflict.
That's good.
Right? Because oftentimes, when you're in the situation, you don't know what to do. And if there's not something there that okay, this is the pathway. There was a lot of working behind the scenes to get me a new dissertation advisor, to limit exposure. And all the while, even in the midst, you can never control what people are saying about you. Right. And some of that happened. Oh, yeah. And then I think that there have to be mechanisms for calling leaders into accountability. You can't treat people any kind of way. And so when an allegation or a story comes up about somebody abusing or deforming a student, there needs to be more than, oh, okay, we'll take care of it. And yeah, people have said this about that person before. Right. Okay. So where is the, listen, it can be tiny and public, but like, where is the public moment of accountability for said person?
Yeah.
Where is the moment where there is a protocol that is drawn up for how we interact, going forward, right? Like, and so you can't leave that on the person who has been harmed to figure out on their own.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are 3 things that I would say. And then I think that, we constantly have to review, right? So certainly there should be like self-regulation and reflection, but sometimes that's not enough, because in leadership, it is very easy to start believing your own hype.
Yes.
It is very easy to believe that you are above reproach, or that, your doo-doo don't stink. It's like, it's very easy to believe your own press. And so it becomes very important that leaders hold one another accountable, and not only like in a fly-by-night way, or like, oh, sister girl, let me talk to you real quick. But like, there need to be like consistent reviews.
Yes.
Right. And maybe even not one-on-one, but like maybe even a triad. One of the things that I'm loving about what we're doing at One Spirit in the education team is that you guys function as a team. There's 3 of you. And in that way, there's kind of a built-in accountability.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? There's a built-in accountability where 2 people can be like, did you having a little, an off day today? Or like, hey, you said this, maybe, where we didn't have that before, such that if people began feeling themselves or getting drunk off the admiration of students, right, which happens, they don't go off and start believing like, oh, well, and now, I don't need anybody, right? It's such a human thing. It's such a human thing to do. And so that's why I really like working in teams. Teams also contribute to that, because I think teams produce a kind of built-in accountability.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Wow. There's so many things that you just offered that I want to just like pick. But the time won't allow me to, so you have to come back. I want to do 2 things. I want you to first talk about, because you mentioned One Spirit, I definitely want to talk about One Spirit and the work that you are doing in terms of your leadership there. But I want to go back, because I think it's important with the first point that you named, of how you would frame accountability for the Church Universal when it comes to minimizing abuse. You named more frameworks of the divine feminine. When did your journey, at what point in your journey did your ideas about God begin to expand?
I think it happened in divinity school, because if I really reflect on it, when I went into divinity school, when I think about my formation, like I was going to like, what is that man? Billy Graham.
Oh yeah, Charlotte, North Carolina. I know Billy Graham.
Yes. When I really reflect on it, I was like, I think I was evangelical. And we look at that and we're like, oh my God.
Your face when you said that.
I think I was evangelical. And so that meant God was a man. So when I went into seminary, when they were talking that he, she stuff, I was like, right? Like I was one of them. When they were talking about same gender loving people and queer people, I was like, right? Like all of these things, but praise God, like living helps you realize, girl, you don't know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? But these are the things that we learn. We learn these very specific frameworks of God and what God will allow. And I think that the more and more I learned about how humanity had co-opted what God had said for the sake of control and domination, that my hands unclasped a bit, and I was ready to receive other things. in terms of the divinity, the femininity of divinity, I think God revealed that to me, just like in my own becoming as a woman. I think that the book project and my graduate work helped me with that a lot. But really on the queer question, which I'm so
Wow.
embarrassed to say it, but I will not let silence hold me hostage. There was this disgusting moment at Duke where there were people from an organization called Sacred Worth, right? Which was
Oh yeah,
essentially,
Sacred Worth was real big at Emory too.
there
Yeah.
we go. And they came to the BSU, right? Now, mind you, I'm trying to remember, this is 2008. This is
Okay.
2008, which is really when things started to shift, I think, in America. Or maybe it was just me who was shifting and I was catching on. But
Mhm.
the people from Sacred Worth came to the BSU and they said, would you sign our banner? Just to, affirm our something. Like, it wasn't even a big, it was, it wasn't a declaration. It was just like, stand with us just in our dignity and our humanity. And I need you to know, we were emphatic on our no. And to this day, that
Mm.
thing haunts me. Like,
Mm.
girl, that was you. That
Mm.
was you. But one of the things that I realized is God is funny, because then God just started putting a lot of people in my life. And when I say a lot of people, I mean like close friends who were
Wow.
same gender loving and trans. And and I write about this in the book. Those relationships
Mm.
disrupt the ideologies every time, every time. And so I think in that turn, I learned relationship over ideology, because let love be your only debt.
Yeah. Yeah. Whew. That brings tears to my eyes as a same gender loving person. Um,
Let me apologize to you now
yeah.
for the disgusting moment. But again, I have to say it to remind myself, and that
Mhm.
also helps when I'm finding someone who is very stringent in their beliefs, because I remember it. Because you
Absolutely.
believe that if you don't open your hands, if you don't hold on to this rigid ideology that in so many ways desecrates the divinity and dignity of your brothers and sisters,
Mhm.
what ends up happening is you get to another level,
Yes.
like, and I think God does that on purpose. like, do you like the idea of me or the
Mhm.
experience? Like, what we doing? Yeah.
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 Are
No,
you
that's
willing to, have enough faith to let your concept of me expand?
mm.
And in turn, your capacity for love
Mm.
expand.
Reverend, you talking good. You talking good. And it is your capacity and willingness to be in relationship that brings me to tears. Not the no that the Black
Yeah.
Student Union gave, because I think the way that relationships work, and the way that conversion works, in
Mm.
terms of how I experience it, is that
Mhm.
conversion works when I am in relationship. Whether I'm having new conversion moments because of my connection to God, or I'm having new conversion moments because of my relationship with someone else.
That's it.
And you being in proximity to people who
Yes.
are same gender loving, queer, and trans allowed you, again, like you said, to expand what love looks like in your life. I received a mailer from one of my aunts, who is a great aunt, who's a part of this. I can't remember what. It's a stringent
Mhm,
Christian
mhm, mm.
denomination, but one of those mailers that said she was inviting me to Bible study, inviting me into salvation. Now I'm someone with a whole with I'm a preacher, I'm a theologian, and so I just think it's interesting. But that means that she's not in relationship with me, and
Yeah.
her ideology is prioritized over her relationship with me.
I want to push back on that a little bit. I mean, I
Yeah,
think you're
yeah,
right. I
yeah.
think you're right. But because I have been delivered from this, I think I also have a soft spot in my heart, because I know
Oh
what it
yeah.
feels right? I know what it feels like to believe that if you don't, that you somehow put your relationship with God in jeopardy,
This is
right? One of the most difficult things for me when I was getting my PhD was, I'm in the shower like, God, please don't let go of my hand, because everything that I thought
mm,
was just it was not sinking ground, but like it was no longer the firm foundation that I thought it was, in the
yeah,
ways that I had been taught by the church. And that feels like it's incredibly scary. And it requires you to build your faith on something other than who's not included.
yes,
And so
mm,
this is comparable to what happens, with white supremacy. When there is no one to oppress anymore, what you gonna do? Now what's the excuse? Now what do you do with yourself and your frailties and the things that you, because at the end of the day, that's what it is. Like, yes, we are in relationship and it's about one another, but it's also about your learning and evolving and becoming.
absolutely.
Right. And when we hold so stringently to these ideologies, there's no room to grow.
Yes, yes,
It's like, okay, this is what it is. And I think it robs us of the robust relationship that we could be having with spirit, with source, with God. And I think that's part of what working with one spirit, which I think we'll talk about as
mhm,
well,
yeah.
also taught me. Yeah.
I hear you naming and your pushback, and I appreciate the pushback, is that one has to be willing to give up one has to be willing to give up their certainty in order to expand their relationship with God.
Certainty.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
That's the big,
scary.
it is scary. Yeah.
And so what they're acting out of is fear, actually, not
Oh
really
yeah.
hatred or right.
Yeah,
It's a
absolutely.
fundamental
Good point.
misunderstanding that produces fear. And like we see it in so many categories: black and brown, woman, queer, same gender, you name it. And so that's why I get excited, because what I know is that I am called to the other side.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
always talk about how, Jesus, whenever you hear about him in the Bible, he's always, let's go to the other side. Let's go to the other side. And I've always looked at that as a kind of mantra, because, okay, yeah, you can feel real comfortable and spiritual in the familiar places sometimes, right? But like, what happens when you switch it up and you're not in your familiar spaces? Is God
Mhm.
still God? Are your
Yes.
ethics still your ethics?
Mm.
And like, what is there to learn here? And is God so small that God cannot withstand your growth or your expansion? Certainly not.
Absolutely. What I think is so interesting as we're having this conversation is that so many Christian fundamentalists who push their ideologies the way that they do, whether it's through mailers, whether it's through attempting to proselytize people, is that it is very Paul centric and not aligned with Jesus's teachings. Because Jesus, like you just mentioned, socializes with people who are perceived to be on the margins in their communities.
Sure
Um,
does.
yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna put that over here
Well, that's
because
a
I know I
conversation
can
for
talk about
today.
it. Really is. We could talk about that for another hour. So,
Absolutely.
One Spirit Learning Alliance. I'm
Yay.
so grateful that you are the CEO there, and our paths crossed at
Yes.
One Spirit. That is a inner spiritual institution, and you talk about your inner spiritual formation. Talk to me about your inner spiritual formation and how you came to One Spirit.
I came to One Spirit after my university downsized, and I needed to figure out what was next, because I didn't want to go back into higher education in the season of Trump. It just, it wasn't a good experience. It was wonderful with the young people. It wasn't so great with the institution. Um, and I saw the role. Actually, a good friend of mine at the time knew a young lady or a minister by the name of Carrie. I don't know what Carrie, I'm not sure what Carrie's last name is. She's a big deal though.
Mm-hmm.
And she passed along the job posting, and I felt like it was a really big job. And I was like, can I do that? I don't know. But the more I started preparing for the interview, it felt like something, yeah, absolutely, you can do. And it was certainly a stretch. And so it was kind of one of those things where I was like, oh, okay, God, you pushing me out there. Okay, that's fine. At the time, I had been grappling with the exclusive nature of Christian discourse. And I wanted to go to the other side. Just that's like, I mean, it's the story of my life. Like I'm a Baptist serving in a Presbyterian context, or a Methodist context, or an Episcopal context, or a Black woman living in, right? Like we have this ability, I think, to be flexible. And so I thought it would be a learning experience. I wasn't completely sold on the concept of interspirituality, but when I got there, I met a number of really impressive people. One second. We have to pause for a second. I'm sorry, there's like a post-nasal drip that won't let me go.
No, I got you.
Sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
I had one of those coughing fits in the middle of serving communion on Sunday.
Gotcha.
It didn't take well.
Gotcha. Understood.
Okay. Should I just start again?
Keep going.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay.
I think interspirituality becomes sort of the final step of expansion for me in finding God, even in language and practices that may not be my own, and stepping away from that kind of exclusivity that says that if you don't rehearse a particular story, God will have no parts of you. I've never experienced God to be that in my experiences with God. And so I really had to step out on faith, while many in my community were like, what are you doing? Like, are you okay? Is this really what you want to be doing? I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine.
And
something going around.
Child. You're going to, yeah. Thank you.
No, you're fine. Here we go.
So interspirituality, as I was saying, kind of became the last frontier of inclusion, because we know, right? Like, no man cometh to the Father except he cometh by me. Like, we know all of these things, right? Go out into the world and make disciples of all people, you know? So again, right? That's the certitude. That's what keeps you safe. That's what allows God to make you worthy or acceptable. And so that's been a hard ideology to shake. But I finally came to the conclusion that, you know, the God I know is loving. The God I know is constantly trying to include everybody. The God that I know wants more than just the story, but wants a life that is lived in connection to the teachings. And so for that reason, I'm always going to the other side. Who else can we include? Who else can we share? Who else? And I would still consider that the gospel, the good news that God loves you, no matter who you are, no matter what you've done. I really love that scripture that says nothing can separate us from the love of God, not death, not height, right? Nothing, not sin. And so I think that if we really take God at God's word, no matter what sacred text that we're reading, that the inclusion of being in relationship with people will never steer us wrong, particularly when our intentions are good and our
Absolutely.
intentions are love.
Absolutely.
And so
Well,
that's what One Spirit has allowed me to do.
I love, Courtney, for you to name what One Spirit Learning Alliance is. It's been such a blessing to be one of the
Yes.
co-directors and deans of sacred systems there, and to work with Rev Sarah and Rev Leah and you and so many others.
Mhm.
What is One Spirit Learning Alliance? When is the next cohort? What are the new things that are happening at One Spirit?
Yes, well, the One Spirit Learning Alliance is a community of spiritual learners from all walks of life, and we call it interspiritual, right, as opposed to interfaith. And we learn from one another, and we are trying to develop competencies in those who engage in our cohorts. Right now, we have something called the Applied Interspiritual Program Pathway. And what that is it's a 2-year program that was formerly considered just the seminary or interspirit seminary for those who felt called to sacred care, sacred work in whatever iteration or form might be right for them. And so we would take people through a variety of different spiritualities so that they could begin to get an understanding of what those looked like, but also for the purposes of helping them to understand what their own personal theology is, right? Like, what do you believe? Okay, you see what folks have said, you've seen the various practices, you've seen the various ethics, but what resonates for you and what can you take from these things in your journey of spiritual service? And what we found is it's been incredibly transformative to the people who participate in it. But what we've also found is that as we've moved in time, because One Spirit has been around for 23 years, that people are not really looking for the same kinds of pathways to ministry as they were in previous years. And part of that is because people can be ordained online. I mean, it's not hard to get ordained these days. And so what we've looked at and said is, okay, we've got people who want to be ministers, but we've also got people who want to be spiritual coaches, who want to be doulas, who want to
Mm-hmm.
take their spiritual acumen and utilize it for other spaces of leadership. And so how can we prepare and equip them for these kinds of experiences? And how can we do so in a way that is spiritually integrous? And so, as you know, we've thought about, well, what are the competencies needed to do this kind of work, but then also to affirm the dignity of all people. And then finally, to work across difference. It is so easy when everybody agrees to work together. But when you have those moments where it's like, well, no, I don't really agree with that. How can we do that in a way that it continues to be respectful, that continues to prioritize the care of the person that you are currently in conflict? And, there are days when we're going to get it right. And then there are going to be days where we're like, we could have maybe done something a little bit better. But even those opportunities become opportunities to grow at One Spirit, because
Yes.
we're constantly documenting, like, okay, this happened. Where did we go wrong? How do we get back to a place of working together? That doesn't mean that we need to be in each other's living rooms braiding each other's hair, but it does mean that we need to have a certain modicum of respect for one another, for the work that we're doing, and a commitment to that
Mm-hmm.
work. And then, man, I've said it a billion times, but I got to say it one more time. Humility, humility,
Oh, absolutely.
humility. And I know, like, particularly for the Black community, I have found that humility becomes a bad word, right? And I get it, right? You be humble, stay in your place. But I do wish that, and I'm not saying that we do away with the ways that we've been harmed, but I'm wondering if there are ways that we can learn and disentangle the trauma from the value of certain principles. And humility is certainly one for me.
Absolutely. Thank you for giving us a snapshot of One Spirit Learning Alliance and what's happening. This is my last question, Courtney, as you leave. As you know, or may not know, KIND stands for Knowing Yourself in Need of Devotion. So my closing question is this. What does it mean in this season of your life to know yourself in need of devotion?
To know yourself and
Need of devotion.
the need of devotion. Yeah, I heard this this question in your introduction. I was like, oh, that's so good. So for me, knowing myself means sitting with myself. It also means answering to myself, right? When needed. It also means coaching myself when needed. And again, not skipping that time of devotion, right? You asked me what devotion was to me. It's anytime I can have an encounter with the Spirit, anytime, that is devotion. And I attempt to put that at the beginning of my day because it is the priority. It is the way that I get through all of this. In fact, when I'm having a hard time, I'm like, Spirit, please take over for me. Like the things I need to learn, teach me. Like when I need to shut my mouth for me. When I need to speak in love, give me the words. When I want to speak in stankness, like that kind of thing. I wrote your question down. What does devotion mean to you as well? Which is the kind of like the second portion of your question. And so for me, devotion is relationship with source, that beginning of the day, but it's also a relationship with me because God lives inside of me. And I think that is something that we are not taught enough. We're not taught enough how to trust ourselves, how to trust our instincts. Man, your gut never lied. Your gut never lied.
Talk about it.
And then finally, devotion is also the way that we handle relationships with others because God lives inside of them too. Right? So you got to have that vertical relationship and those horizontal relationships. But one of the things that I've always been, that I always hold to, right? We love your neighbor as you would love yourself. A lot of people don't love themselves. So how can they love their neighbors? So that love begins in the relationship that you have with me. I mean, with yourself. And I have to say, I love me some me, even when she's messing up.
Yes.
And she needs that, right? You've got to be your first love. You've got to be. That doesn't mean that love should supersede your love for others and that you should not make room. But this world will tell you any and everything about what you're doing wrong. And fewer people will tell you about the things that you're doing right or encourage you. Like everybody's a critic. Everybody's a critic. But when you have those people who are like, hey, you should think about this and here's how I can help, right? I want to be that kind of person, a solution bearing person, because that to me is also a huge form of love. So relationship with source, time with yourself, good speaking to yourself, mantras. I'm really into mantras these days. And then finally helping others. Like when I am coaching someone, when I am managing someone, when I'm simply in a relationship with someone, for me, that is an extension of my relationship with the divine.
Beautiful. Thank you for naming all of those wisdoms, particularly to be your first love. You all have heard it here on KYNDversations with Reverend Dr. Courtney Bryant. I want you all to remember that your life is sacred, your voice matters, and your becoming is holy. Until next time, stay devoted to the divine within you and be sure to join us for the next KYNDversation next Wednesday at 5 a.m. We go live so you all have access to it throughout the week. We'll see you soon. Peace and abundant blessings.